वेलकम स्टूडेंट्स, हम डिस्कस कर रहे हैं दी 10th न्यूमेरिकल फ्रॉम द एक्सरसाइज फॉर द चैप्टर थर्मल प्रॉपर्टीज ऑफ मैटर, जो कि 7वां चैप्टर है हमारे 11th स्टैंडर्ड फिजिक्स का. सो लेट्स स्टार्ट. नाउ क्वेश्चन सेज an aluminium rod and an iron rod show 1.5 meter difference in their lengths when heated at all temperature. What are their lengths at 0 degree Celsius if the coefficient of linear expansion, yani alpha, for aluminium is 2.45 into 10 raised to minus 6 per degree Celsius, and for iron it is 11.9 into 10 raised to minus 6 per degree Celsius as well. Now let's try to understand the same question using our diagram. So हमारे पास दो rods है, उसमें से एक rod बना हुआ है of material iron and the second rod is made up of the material aluminium. Now question speaks of a very unique condition. हमें पता है कि as we heat the length of the rod will change, but no matter at what temperature we heat these two rods, the difference between the length of the two rods, so this is the difference between the length of the two rods, is always going to be a constant value, and that constant is said to be 1.5 meter in our question. So having known this condition and with some other values, they have asked to find out the length of the iron rod first. So we have to find the length of the iron rod such that it is measured when the temperature is 0 degrees Celsius, and then also find the length of the second rod, that is our aluminium rod, provided that the temperature is 0 degrees Celsius for this as well. So हमें दो लेंथ्स ढूंढना है दोनों रॉड का, आयरन रॉड एंड एल्यूमिनियम रॉड का, and this length has to be found when the temperature is 0 degree Celsius. ठीक है? Now that we understand the question in a better way, let's try to solve this. The first step we do is we'll write all the given data that's been given to us. Okay. So the first forms of data that's been given to us is the temperature and the lengths that were measured on those temperatures. So मैं एक छोटा सा टेबल बना दूंगा and so that हमको थोड़ा आसानी होगा representation के लिए. So we have temperature, then we have the length of our first rod, so that is our iron rod, and then we also have the length of our second rod, so that it will be our aluminium rod. So when temperature is 0 degrees Celsius, when it is T0, we represent the length measured for iron as L0 of I and the length measured for aluminium rod as L0 of AL. So this is the length of both the rods when the temperature is 0 degrees Celsius. And let's say when the temperature is any temperature, let's say it is T degrees Celsius. At that point, the length measured for our iron rod, I denote it as LT of I, and the length measured for our aluminium rod, we defined it as LT of AL. So these are the 6 quantities जो हमने define की है. One set of quantity is for the 0 degree Celsius, and the other set of quantities are for any temperature T. Okay. Now that हमने ये चीजें डिफाइन कर दी है, so as per the given condition, first condition जो हमारे क्वेश्चन के फर्स्ट स्टेटमेंट में आ रहा है कि the difference between the length of these two rods, so LT of iron minus the LT of aluminium, so this is the difference between the iron rod and the aluminium rod का length at any temperature T. So this is always going to be a constant value, and this is said to be 1.5 meter. Because of this, I can also say that since this condition is true for all temperatures, so even if we were to measure the lengths at, let's say, 0 degrees Celsius, so L0 of I minus the length of aluminium at 0 degrees Celsius would also have the same difference. Okay, so इसका conclusion ये भी निकलता है कि हर temperature पे दोनों rod के differences 1.5 meter ही आएगा. So this was our first statement or the first condition. Second statement क्या था? Well, हमें पता है कि जो T0, that is our initial temperature, is 0 degree Celsius. Apart from this, हमें जो है alpha of iron दिया है, that is the coefficient of linear expansion, which is 11.9 into 10 raised to minus 6 per degree Celsius. And then हमको दिया है the value of alpha for aluminium, and the value is 24.5 into 10 raised to minus 6 per degree Celsius as well. So we have these four quantities. One is a statement or a condition, and then temperature, and then two coefficients of linear expansion. And using this, हमसे पूछा है to find two quantities. The first quantity is the length of iron rod when the temperature is 0. So L0 of I. So this, let me mark it as length of iron rod at 0 degree Celsius. Similarly, second quantity हमसे पूछा है the length of aluminium rod at 0 degree Celsius. So this is our length of aluminium rod, so Al rod at 0 degree Celsius as well. So the formula to calculate the length of a rod at any temperature, Lt. Okay, so this is the length of the rod at T temperature, is said to be length measured at initial temperature, so L0 into 1 plus alpha times delta T. So change in temperature, which can be also written as L0 into 1 plus alpha times temperature T minus the initial temperature. So this is our delta T. But हमें पता है for our given condition हमारा T0 is 0 degree Celsius. So because of this हम जो है हमारे formula को update कर सकते हैं as LT, that is the length of the rod at T temperature, is equal to L0 into 1 plus alpha times T, because हमने इस formula में T0 को 0 substitute कर दिया है. So because of this our formula is now simplified to this smaller formula. Now if we were to use this formula, so in our calculation, if I say from formula number 2, I can say that the length at any temperature T for iron is equal to the length of iron at 0 degree Celsius plus 1 plus alpha of iron, alpha I, times temperature T. So using the formula, I can say this for our iron rod. Let me call this as our equation number 2. Also, we can say that the length of aluminium rod at temperature T is equal to the length of aluminium rod at 0 degree Celsius into 1 plus alpha of aluminium times temperature T. So let me mark this as our equation number 2. And now I have these two equations. So one equation is for our iron rod and the second equation is for our aluminium rod. And now if I were to subtract equation number 1 from 2, so subtracting equation 1 from 2, I can say LT of I minus LT of AL is equal to L naught I 1 plus alpha I T minus L naught of AL plus 1 plus alpha of AL into T. Now let's try to work on this side of our equation and let's try to simplify these two terms. Okay, so let's multiply in the bracket. So L naught of I times 1 gives us L naught of I plus L naught of I into alpha of I times T gives us L naught of I alpha of I into T. Similarly, minus L naught of AL into 1 gives us minus L naught of AL, and minus L naught of AL over here times alpha ALT gives us minus L naught of AL alpha of AL times temperature T. Now let's focus on this term and bring them together. So let me make a small bracket. So in this bracket we have L naught of I minus L naught of AL, and then let's take this term and this term together, and let's take out temperature T common from both the terms as well. So उसके वजह से जो भी equation हमारे पास बचेगा, that must be, so this is L naught of I times alpha I. This is plus L naught of I times alpha I minus L naught of AL, alpha AL, and we close the bracket, and then we have the common term temperature outside the bracket. And this is equal to our term on our LHS, LT of I minus LT of AL. Now, this term ka value we know, it is equal to 1.5. It's given to us. We also know what L naught of I minus L naught of AL is. That is also 1.5, because differences of length is always constant for this condition. So let us substitute this value. So we get 1.5 is equal to 1.5. So this is the substitution of this bracket. And then we have plus, we have L naught of I times alpha of I minus L naught of AL times alpha of AL as well. And then we keep this into square bracket, and then we have the term T outside the bracket. So over here we have 1.5 and we have plus 1.5. If I were to shift this, this plus would become minus 1.5. So 1.5 minus 1.5 is now L naught of I, alpha of I minus L naught of AL, alpha of AL, square bracket T. Okay, so 1.5 minus 1.5 gives us 0. This gives us square bracket L naught of I, alpha of I minus L naught of AL, and alpha of AL times T. If I were to divide by T on both the sides, then our equation would be 0 is equal to L naught of I times alpha of I minus L naught of AL times alpha of AL. Okay, now if I were to bring the two like terms on each side, so I can say L0 of AL times the alpha of AL is equal to L0 of I times the alpha of I. With this, I can say if I were to send this alpha of AL on the RHS, so I get L0 of AL, so that is the length of rod aluminium on at 0 degrees Celsius is equal to the alpha of I divided by alpha of AL times the length of iron rod at 0 degree Celsius. Now alpha of I and alpha of AL is given to us in our given section. As you can see, alpha of I pata hai, alpha of AL pata hai. Let's quickly substitute this and try to solve this आगे. ठीक है. So alpha of I is said to be 11.9 into 10 raised to minus 6, and alpha of AL is said to be 24.5 times 10 raised to minus 6 into L0 of I. Now we can cancel 10 raised to minus 6 and 10 raised to minus 6 straight away. And if we were to solve this further, we will get 11.9 upon 24.5 can be written as 17 upon 35 times the length of iron rod at 0 degree Celsius. So our length of aluminium rod at 0 degree Celsius is 17 upon 35 times the length of L naught upon I. Now, if we were to, let's mark this as equation number 3. And also, we know, as per the given statement, that L0 of I minus L0 of AL is equal to 1.5. So from 3, if we were to substitute this value of L naught of AL, so this value in place of this, we would get an expression in terms of only one variable, and then we will be able to find the length of iron at 0 degrees Celsius, and then we can eventually find the length of aluminium rod as well. So step 1, let's substitute the value of L0 of AL as 17 upon 35 times L0 of I in this equation. So I write upon substituting from 3, I can say L naught of I minus 17 upon 35 times L naught of I gives us 1.5. Now if I were to multiply by and now if I were to multiply by 35 throughout, I would get 35 times L naught of I minus 17 times L naught of I gives me 1.5 into 35. Okay, so 35 minus 17 gives us 18 times L naught of I is equal to 1.5 into 35 gives us 52.5. So therefore from this we get the length of iron as 52.5 upon 18. Now when you solve this in your schools or as exams, you will have to use logs for further calculation. So use logs for calculations, but in video I'm going to skip this and directly write the answer. So if you were to divide 52.5 by 18, the answer comes out to be 2.917. So this is the measurement of the iron rod at 0 degrees Celsius. So 2.917 meters. So that is the unit for length. So this was the first part of our numerical, but we have to also find the value of the iron rod ka length. So L naught of AL was from the above equation, that is third equation, it was 17 AI35 into the length of the iron rod. So this is 2.917. And again, you'll have to use logs for further calculations. So I'm just going to write use logs for calculations. But in video, we'll do it directly. And if you were to solve this, you would get the answer as 1.417 meters. So this is the length of aluminium rod when measured at 0 degrees Celsius. And this is also the second part of our solution. And with this, we are done. Now, if you want the PDF of the solution, make sure to check the description. Have a nice day.